everyone, Shannon Petrovich with Therapist Talks. Today we're going to talk about trauma. Trauma is a big topic, and sometimes when I'm doing these videos I feel like I'm feeding you a drink of water through a fire hose, and that is a little bit what it's like, but I'm going to try to chunk it down, make it meaningful, but not overwhelm. Again, this is not a substitute for therapy, just sharing some insights and information that I give all of my clients all of the time. And sometimes, if you're in a certain situation, this might be helpful. One of the things I want to start with is just defining trauma. Trauma, by definition, is something that happens that overwhelms the system and makes you feel like you might die or somebody else is going to die, or basically renders you feeling powerless or helpless. And that's really the damaging aspect of trauma. Now, trauma can be a one-time huge event, or it can be chronic over time. A lot of kids feel powerless and helpless and overwhelmed throughout their childhood, so that's sort of chronic trauma is what we call it. So the other definition of trauma is that it changes the way you feel about yourself, about others, and about the world. In terms of how it changes how you feel about yourself, little kids are not born feeling like a burden or feeling unlovable or feeling worthless, or a lot of the things that kids feel and adults feel because of their childhood. So that is how it changes how you feel about yourself. Children start to feel like, if nobody's loving me, then maybe I'm unlovable. If it seems like my parents are depressed, then maybe I'm a burden. If they're not treating me like I'm worth something, then maybe I am worthless. So that's how it changes how you feel about yourself. It changes how you feel about others. You maybe see others as dangerous or not there for you, or scary. And it also changes how you view the world or your life or God, if you will. So there are 3 ways that it changes you. The way we can sort of figure out how you've defined yourself is what do you do inside your head when you're under stress? So when things go wrong, things are challenging, things are difficult, do you say, hang in there, you got this, you can do this? Or do you say, oh, I'm such a piece of blah, 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 I'm so worthless, I'm so stupid, I'm so ugly, fat, whatever? Do you berate yourself inside your head? Those stories came from somewhere, and they didn't. Again, we're not born thinking those things about ourselves. So what do you say to yourself when you're under stress? So it isn't just what happened to you, it's really how you storied that when you were a little kid. Oftentimes those stories come from, like I said, having parents who are depressed or fighting, or alcoholic or drug addicted, or sort of really hot and cold. So parents who have their own stories, obviously, who are challenged in any way and maybe aren't parenting in the most optimal way. And a child sort of looks at that, and children being very much self-centered and self-focused, the way they see that is that it's about them. So if mom is depressed, how come I'm not enough to make her happy? I'm not very lovable, I'm not very worthwhile. So it's not what happens to you, but how you story it that then lives on in your psyche until you take it out and challenge it. The beauty is that you can take those stories out and look at them truthfully, and then challenge them and change them. So when we're looking at those stories, we need to step back and look and say, well, am I worthless, or am I really a burden? Am I really unlovable? Well, if I look at my current life, no. There are all these good things in my life, and there are all these good people in my life, and there are all these good experiences in my life. And oftentimes people who carry trauma and don't look at those aspects, they really have good lives from what everybody else can see. And yet they continually dog themselves internally in the same way they did when they were little kids. So the most important piece is to look at how you were just a child in that situation. You didn't cause it, you didn't create it, and you couldn't cure it. You couldn't fix it on any level. And it wasn't that you were worthless, it was just that you felt that way in that situation. So feelings are not facts. That's a really important point I drive home with my clients a lot. Feelings are not facts, they're feelings. And we can feel some way about something, and it's oftentimes about the story we're telling ourselves about that. So if I'm looking at having had a depressed mom or an alcoholic father, and I say, I feel worthless, and that's a real feeling. Am I worthless? No. I was just a little kid in the midst of a really insane situation that was really difficult to live through. So when we take those stories out and look at them in the light of day in our adult lives and say, no, I was just a little kid, I was just on the train tracks and I got hit by the train, but I didn't put myself there and it wasn't my fault. Then we can look at, well, you know, the truth of the story. I survived that situation. I was pretty smart to do these kinds of things, to excel in school so that I could feel decent about myself, or to, you know, be really good with animals because they were kind of my best friends. Or all those different coping strategies that little kids come up with. We can look at people's strengths and their survivorhood and help people feel good about what they survived instead of letting them stay stuck in that old story. So when you take it out in the light of day and you look at your story, then it changes. You can actually change how you see yourself, how you see others, and how you see the world. So you change the way you look at yourself. I am lovable. I am worthwhile. I am not a burden. I am, you know, worthwhile in my life. I can create good things in my life, and I have good people in my life. You can also change the way you look at others. Some people are trustworthy, some are not. Some people are there for you, some are not. But I don't have to put a blanket statement on the world that's all negative because of the way I grew up. And it even changes the way you see the world and life. You can make meaning out of your story. So many people really find encouragement when you tell your story, and when you show your survivorship and you show that you can shift how you feel about yourself, that actually has meaning for others, and then has meaning for you. So we can turn our trauma into triumph, and that's a really wonderful thing. And so we'll talk next time about the science behind all of this, because there's some really fascinating science around trauma too. And I'm excited to tell you all about that and how we change the science of the trauma to shift our own brain chemistry into positive overdrive instead of negative. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon.